Hello there, good evening. Welcome to Look North, our top story tonight. A violent man who raped his ex-partner is almost freed from prison by mistake. She criticises the government early release scheme.
They're going to have blood on their hands, and that's the reality of it.
The government only realised the mistake when the case was raised by the BBC. Also tonight, a fan dies after a medical event during Saturday's Sheffield Wednesday game. Fellow supporters want to know why the game wasn't stopped. A drug needed every day in short supply. One man who depends on it is frightened for the future. And the amazing piece of land art which has grown out of nowhere at Whitby Abbey.
Well, what an awful end to September. We've still got a warning in place. Will early October be any better? Join me to find out.
Hello, thanks for joining us for the first Look North of the week. A woman from South Yorkshire has criticised the government's early prisoner release programme after her violent ex-partner was almost released by mistake. 1,700 prisoners were released this month to ease overcrowding. The woman was told her former partner would be one of them, and she contacted Look North for help. But after we spoke to the Ministry of Justice, they said they'd made a mistake and the man would stay in prison. Just to warn you, this report from Tom Ingle contains details about domestic abuse that you might find upsetting.
Before I knew it, he got an object and beat me really bad, to the point where the day after, my whole body was just all bruised. He said he'd never done it before and he'll never do it again. And then it was from then, it was like not even once a month or every now and again, it was a few times a week.
This is Kate. That's not her real name, but this is her voice and her experiences at the hands of a violent former partner.
After a few years, it became sexual. So there were times where he'd rape me, sexually assault me, and I think for him, the more power he had and the more violent he got, the worse he got, and there was just no stopping him. And I think when I had my children, I thought naively that he wouldn't turn on them, and he did.
What is the thing that makes you find the courage to speak to the authorities?
He went around the area saying, "You're not going to have mummy anymore because I'm going to chop her up and put her in the blue bin, and you're not going to have mummy anymore."
He was eventually convicted of numerous offences, including sexual ones. The sentence was 16 years, with half to be served in prison. A few weeks ago, the new government drew up emergency plans to release prisoners who had served 40% of their time inside to reduce overcrowding.
I had a meeting, and that's when they told me that he was getting released, and I just burst out crying, and I just said, "Please don't let him out of prison." And the distress that I felt re-traumatised. I felt like a victim all over again. I felt scared. And for me, it just felt like, how can this be happening? I felt like it was a nightmare that I weren't going to wake up from.
The man had also been told he would be released as part of the scheme. In desperation, Kate contacted the BBC to share her fear. But when we spoke to the Ministry of Justice, they told us there had been a mistake and the man was not eligible for release.
When I asked the question, okay then, so if I hadn't have highlighted this, that this has felt so wrong and other people didn't look into it, would he have got released? And she said, yeah. And that's quite scary for me because I feel that there's going to be a lot of victims out there where they mistakenly release them or release them early, and it's going to be too late because something will happen to them victims. It's just not good enough. The government are they're going to have blood on their hands, and that's the reality of it.
He may not walk free now, but the man who raped Kate and abused their children is still expected to be released in early 2025. You have a potential shadow over your life, knowing that that man is coming out of prison. How do you move forward on a day-to-day basis?
I feel like life's just going to change and it's unfair. 16 years should be 16 years and not half. And I do fear for my life and I fear for my daughters, and I just don't know how things are going to be when it comes out, because to me, I can't bear to even think how bad things are going to be. Because when I found the news out, I never thought I'd feel that fear again. I never thought I'd feel that trauma again. but it seemed to all come back when I found that news out. So the government put me through all that, making that error for nothing.
Well, if you or someone you know has been affected by that report, you can contact the BBC Action Line at bbc.co.uk/action line for details of organisations offering advice and support. Let's talk more about the early prisoner release scheme with Tom Ingle. Tom, it's certainly been controversial, hasn't it?
Absolutely. It doesn't show any signs of going away, does it, this story? And there are more releases to come. What we do know is the Ministry of Justice have told us that 37 people were incorrectly released, and as of Friday, 36 of those were back behind bars and they were working on the last one. However, Women's Aid, who are a national charity working to stop domestic abuse, told us they felt this policy is coming at the price of safety of women and children. The Victims Commissioner, Baroness Ulove, said she was troubled by the incorrect release of those 37 people. Now, let's turn to the Ministry of Justice, because let's not forget, it wasn't until Kate came to talk to us and we said to the Ministry of Justice what's happening here that they realised there had been a mistake. They have said public safety is our top priority. They took decisive action to fix the broken prison system they inherited. We understand this incident will be distressing to victims, which is why we immediately contacted those in the Victim Contact Scheme and offered additional support as soon as the extent of the issue was known. That's in particular relation to those 37.
Tom, thank you. Next tonight, football fans have expressed their anger that Saturday's match at Sheffield Wednesday was not stopped after a man had a medical episode in the stands and sadly later died. The West Brom fan had been named as Mark Townsend. Our reporter Mark Ansell is live outside Hillsborough Stadium for us tonight. Mark, tell us what happened.
Well, Amy, 26,000 fans were here at Hillsborough on Saturday afternoon for the early kick-off between Sheffield Wednesday and West Bromwich Albion. Partway through the first half, a supporter in the away end had a medical emergency in the stands and sadly later died. He's been named as 57-year-old Mark Townsend. Now, a West Brom fan who says he helped deliver first aid to Mark Townsend has raised concerns about the Leppings Lane end where the away fans were. He's told the BBC that CPR chest compressions could be delivered, but there was no room to do the immediate mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and there was limited space to get the stretcher down to the concourse. Now, some fans have questioned the amount of time it took for Mark Townsend to be treated, and also why the game wasn't stopped. Now, BBC Radio Sheffield sports editor Rob Staton was at the match on Saturday commentating, and he's been telling us what he saw.
You could see the vast majority of the West Brom fans in the Leppings Lane end waving, trying to get the referee's attention to stop the game because there was a medical emergency. This went on for quite a long period of time. There were players on the pitch trying to get the referee's attention to say, look, there's something going off in Leppings Lane. The referee spoke to those players, and then the game continued. Eventually, we saw the medical staff go up to Leppings Lane and go and give some assistance to the gentleman who was having the medical emergency, but the game carried on.
Rob, were you surprised that the match wasn't stopped?
I was surprised because I was at a game in April between Rotherham and Birmingham, and the game was stopped. A gentleman received CPR and actually survived after going to hospital, and that game stopped for about half an hour. So my expectation was that the same thing was going to happen, that the game would stop, the medical team would go to Leppings Lane, but it carried on. I've since spoken to the EFL, they've shown me what the guidance is to match officials in that situation, and the guidance does say that in that instance, because of the public sort of witnessing this and privacy, and because the media would be covering it, that the advice is that in most situations that the game should continue.
Sheffield Wednesday and West Brom have said they'll be working together to try to establish and investigate the circumstancing of the man's death. Now, meanwhile, a man has been charged following social media posts which appeared to mock the death of the West Brom fan and also make reference to the Hillsborough disaster of 1989, which led to the deaths of 97 Liverpool fans. 55-year-old Richard Crisp from Hillsborough has been released on bail and is due to appear before Sheffield Magistrates Court next month. Back to you, Amy.
Matt, thank you. North Yorkshire Police has referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct after the death of a man in Harrogate. They'd been contacted with the victim prior to his death. He was found last night at a flat in Strawberry Dale. Officers have arrested 2 men aged 26 and 34 on suspicion of murder and 1 man in his 40s on suspicion of assisting an offender. Detectives have asked for anybody with information to call the police. 60 biomedical scientists in some Yorkshire hospitals are on strike today. Microbiologists and blood scientists at York, Scarborough and Bridlington hospitals are striking over what the union calls unsustainable workloads, which it says putting patients' safety at risk. The hospital trust says routine testing will be affected, but priority testing will continue as normal.
We've actually been trying to talk to the trust about this for over a year, and this was entirely predictable when they closed the lab. And we want sort of safe staffing levels, and we want people to only work within their discipline, because these people work in different sections, and again it's important that that specialisation is respected and understood by the trust.
A man from Knaresborough has completed 5 ultramarathons in 5 days to raise money for charity. Daniel Molesworth ran and walked around 40 miles a day on his coast-to-coast route between Cumbria and Robin Hood's Bay, almost climbing the height of Everest. He was raising funds for the Book Trust, which aims to give every child access to reading. A pensioner from Rotherham says he's worried he won't live past Christmas because of a shortage of a drug that he needs every day. 74-year-old John Swale survived pancreatic cancer, but he now relies on a drug called Creon to help him digest food. The drug is also used by people with other conditions, but there are major supply problems, as Olivia Richwald reports.
A small pill that can make a huge difference to thousands of people. John had most of his pancreas removed 30 years ago, and Creon helps him to digest food, but he's been told that due to supply problems, he might not be able to get the drug again until next year.
If you don't take Creon, everything ceases. I feel let down. I know I've had a good life, but I'm worried there. All my family's gone and that. It's frightening. It's bloody frightening. It's like waiting for death.
Creon replaces enzymes produced by a healthy pancreas. It's made from pig pancreas and needs to be taken at the same time as a meal or snack. Once in the small intestine, Creon helps to break down fats, carbohydrates and proteins so that the nutrients can be used by the body. Among the conditions that Creon treats are pancreatic cancer, cystic fibrosis and sometimes diabetes or celiac disease.
By not taking it, essentially people are flushing some of their meds down the toilet. The problem of not taking it can mean that people may be putting on weight or losing weight. It means that they've got problems in terms of, like I said, their diets and their ability to take their other treatments, but also it just places huge stress on people. There are people who are spending hours a week trying to phone around pharmacies, just trying to find another pack of their supply.
Dan takes it for his cystic fibrosis and has had to ration the tablets, which is impacting his life.
I don't end up having as much as I normally would do, so on a practical basis that then means that I am having to make decisions to take slightly fewer tablets with snacks and meals. You know, sometimes it does mean reducing things a little bit with meals, or kind of more specifically also thinking about, well, I won't necessarily have that, or I'll choose something different to either cook or eat out because I know that I've not necessarily got enough Creon to be able to eat that.
The shortage of Creon extends across Europe and is due to supply issues with the raw ingredients. In a statement, the Department of Health said it understood how frustrating and distressing it was for patients and clinicians. It said the government had inherited a broken NHS alongside global supply issues, and it was working to resolve the problems as quickly as possible. Olivia Richwald, BBC Look North.
Last week it was Labour's turn in Liverpool. Today the Conservative conference is underway in Birmingham with MPs and members discussing what went wrong at the last election. Yorkshire MP and former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called on his party to unite. Our political editor James Vincent joins us now live from Birmingham. James, all yours.
Yeah, evening, Amy. Some of the words you might hear most often here in Birmingham: regroup, rebuild, listening to people, and I guess the big question is why? Why did they lose so badly in July at the general election, and what can they do from the Conservative Party's point of view to improve their fortunes? You might remember that every conference we normally speak to the leader of the party, but Rishi Sunak, one of our MPs, currently the leader of the Conservative Party, didn't want to speak to us at all. We tried our best to get hold of him. Of course, he's only leader for another couple of weeks. They're choosing new candidates between those candidates for the new leadership of the party. Rishi Sunak, for his part, apologised to party members last night and said there needs to be a little less infighting in the Conservative Party.
We must end the division, the backbiting, the squabbling. We mustn't nurse old grudges but build new friendships. We must always remember what unites us rather than obsessing about where we might differ. Because when we turn in on ourselves, we lose, and the country ends up with a Labour government.
He was straight off, by the way, after that speech. There was no time to speak to him. He was straight in the car and he was on his way back to North Yorkshire. No interviews from Rishi Sunak. I've been speaking to some of our MPs that are left. There are only 5 left in Yorkshire. In fact, I've spoken to and seen more ex-MPs than I've seen current MPs, such as the state of the party in Yorkshire. I've been speaking to Alexander Stafford, who lost his seat in July, and Robbie Moore, who kept his seat in July. Both tight margins, but they're on the same page about what the Conservatives need to do to get some of those seats back.
The public were tired of disunity in the Conservative Party. We said one thing, did something else, too much infighting. We didn't actually achieve what we wanted to do. But what I think is quite interesting in the result for Rother Valley is Labour vote, the actual numbers of votes, only went up by a few hundred votes.
The conference is about not only scrutinising what went wrong and where we lost votes to what we were seen to not be delivering on, and there was an issue of trust, I think, on the doorsteps, not just necessarily the Conservative Party, dare I say, but actually just with politicians in general. And this conference is about regrouping, getting behind a leader and making sure that we are in a position to fight the next general election and win it.
So the MPs sort of stressing to me that there's optimism here, but there's a real sense of what went wrong and what can they do to sort it out. And it's all one thing talking to MPs and party members. What about the public? It's the public at the end of the day that can decide to put the Conservatives back into power or not. We've been out in North Yorkshire, the seats where we've got the most Conservative MPs remaining, to see what people want from the party.
Everything's gone up in price. I've struggled financially to look after children. If they could cut costs down and make life a lot easier for families and single parents, pensioners, anybody, it would just be a lot helpful.
I think it would be good to see some clear policies that actually are to the advantage of ordinary people. Without good opposition from whichever, then Parliament's not going to be healthy.
They need to soften their language, don't they? That's how I feel. I mean, it would seem that a lot of die-hard or middle ground Conservatives were pretty appalled by the tone that Braverman and Sunak and Patel took.
I'm here all week at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. I'll try and track down some more MPs and ex-MPs for you, Amy, and work out what the party needs to do next time the election comes round.
Enjoy Birmingham. James, thank you. Time for sport now with Sally, and she's looking at Dreaming Green.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, let's start with cricket, shall we? Because Yorkshire are celebrating their return to Division 1 of the County Championship. It follows a turbulent couple of years. They were demoted in 2022 and last season had points deducted for the club's handling of the Azim Rafiq racism scandal. But this season, they achieved their aim of promotion. They needed to score more than 350 runs in their first innings against Northamptonshire to confirm it, and they managed that on Saturday. It was also head coach Otis Gibson's last match in charge, an emotional moment for him and captain Johnny Tattersall.
Just really proud of everybody who's contributed this season, from staff all the way through to players, even the lads in the second team. They might not think that they've contributed a lot this season, but it's a team effort, and it's just great to get over the line.
This year, especially this year, has been tough. So to be standing here in front of you now, having achieved our goals, it's good. It's a good feeling for me, but I'm sure it's a better feeling for them because next year they'll be playing cricket in the First Division.
Also celebrating is Doncaster boxer Terry Harper, who is now a 3-weight world champion after beating Rhiannon Dixon at the weekend. Harper won the WBO lightweight title on points, claiming a unanimous decision at the Cannon Medical Arena in Sheffield. She said it was the best fight of her career to win against the previously unbeaten Dixon. On to football, and in the Championship, Sheffield Wednesday substitute Anthony Musaba's late strike gave the Owls a 3-2 victory over previously unbeaten league leaders West Brom. Albion had battled back from a 2-0 half-time deficit, but at 86 minutes Musaba tapped in his first goal of the season to earn Wednesday their second league victory and end a 4-game winless run. Staying with the Championship, and at Elland Road, Leeds United cruised to a 3-0 win against Coventry City. Leeds dominated with goals from Willie Gnonto, Jayden Bogle and Joel Pirou. The win puts Leeds 5th in the table. In League Two, Harrogate beat Bradford with 2 early goals from Stephen Dooley and Ellis Taylor. The Bantams then got one back when Anthony O'Connor was dispossessed by Andy Cook, who ran through on goal and slotted in. Final score, Harrogate 2, Bradford 1. And Chesterfield beat Doncaster 3-0 in an eventful game at the Eco Power Stadium. Doncaster had 2 players sent off, including, controversially, Luke Molyneux, who got a second yellow card for kicking the ball away. Chesterfield were dominant with 3 goals, including this from Paddy Madden from the spot. A great win for the Spyrites, this their first against the Rovers in almost 20 years.
Sally, thank you. Thanks, Sal. Take a look at this. It looks incredible, doesn't it? It looks like an artist impression, but it's actually a huge land art installation at Whitby Abbey. The Heritage Tree, as it's called, was commissioned to celebrate the impact of individuals on culture. It's the size of 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. I'll let Carla Fowler explain the rest.
Already an iconic landmark on the Yorkshire coastline, today Whitby Abbey is even more breathtaking than usual. The Heritage Tree is a new land art installation. Commissioned by the National Lottery in its 30th year, it symbolises the impact and importance of conservation and heritage. Internationally renowned artist David Poper creates land frescoes from natural pigments. This incredible image will biodegrade and disappear, leaving no trace.
Probably the most exciting part was getting this tree to run through the middle of the Abbey and the transept and then sort of blooming out and coming out the back. It was definitely very difficult technically to try to pull that off. We used a series of different techniques, from taking a lot of different drone reference photos and even 3D design and 3D software to make sure that we have the right concept down. It is a huge labor of love to pull something like this off.
7 hands form the tree's roots, each belonging to a heritage game changer. Wildlife conservationist and presenter Chantel Lindsay from Doncaster is one.
To be in it and actually stood within a bit of artwork, I mean, it's a massive symbol of how we should treat the earth, you know, we're all kind of you're sort of tiptoeing on it at first because you're like, oh my gosh, this is art that someone's created. But actually, you know, it's something that's so precious and could be washed away, you know, any minute. That's the whole point of it, is to show that it's going to go back into the earth. So I'd say come and see it for yourself.
Even former Time Team frontman Sir Tony Robinson was in Whitby to help the National Lottery publicise this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see the Abbey as never before.
We've got the incredible Gothic ruins here, and surrounding it and incorporating it and involved in it is this fantastic artwork. Come up and look at it, but come up and look at it quickly, because it's a wonderful biodegradable piece of art and it won't stay very long, particularly given the rain and wind that we've got at the moment. Why should you come and look at it? Just because it's wonderful.
Because of the storm a few days ago that wiped out the 7 hands, I had to redo all of them. And yesterday, at this time, we had 3 hands that were not complete, and probably 50% of the leaves out on this side of the Abbey were not complete. And so, kind of painted like I've never painted before in my entire life. And I'm exceptionally pleased by the way it turned out.
Beauty beneath your feet and above your head. Carla Fowler, BBC Look North, Whitby Abbey.
Wow, that's just incredible, isn't it? Let's hope it's still there with all this rain this week. We've had an email from Anna and Joe. They've got a joint 50th party on Saturday.
Have they?
In a field.
Right.
They want to know, Is it going to be all right?
You put me on the spot there. Well, the field will be very wet and there is some rain in the forecast, but, you know, it might change. Let's hope it will do. But
Fingers crossed.
We've got some weather pictures, I hope, from the weekend when we had a lot of sunshine. I don't know whether they're going to make, if somebody could tell me. There we are in Scarborough, looking absolutely beautiful there. That was first thing Saturday morning. It's, you know, those reflections in the sea and on the beach are phenomenal. And the second picture is one in Sheffield. I think that might be Grenoside Woods, actually. I might be mistaken, but it just gives you the idea that autumn is very much here. And if you've got any pictures, maybe not today because of all the rain, although we've had some quite high totals, localised flooding is certainly a possibility. Send them to me in the next few hours if you could. And we start with a warning. This is in place until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. Some spots are had approaching 2 inches of rain already today, courtesy of this area of low pressure still hanging around tomorrow. Not too good tomorrow, but high pressure. The good news is high pressure is back on the scene from midweek, and that means things will settle down. But for that party in the park or wherever it is, these weather systems will push in, spoiling things over the weekend. Now, there's the radar picture. In the last few hours, it's become torrential across parts of South Yorkshire. I'm sure there will be some localised flooding coming through in the next hour or two, and it continues like this over the next few hours. Eventually, we'll see the intensity of the rain easing off, and this system does pull away to the south. We'll see lowest temperatures coming in at 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. So tomorrow's high water times in Filey at 4:24, and again at 4:50. So it might start dry in the west, but a strengthening wind brings more cloud and patchy rain and drizzle in from the North Sea. Not the wall of water we've had today, but that patchy rain and drizzle never far away. You'll notice the wind, a strong and gusty northerly along the coast, just 13 in Scarborough with a 4-6 northerly. I think further west, 12 or 13 Bradford and Huddersfield. More of the same into Tuesday evening, when it will continue to be cloudy with rain and drizzle. However, we end the forecast on a positive note because Wednesday looks a lot better. It looks dry with some sunshine. We keep that fine weather Thursday and Friday, but then it all goes downhill again just in time for the weekend. That's the forecast.
Just in time for that party in the field.
No.
Now, talking about planning ahead actually for the weather, we are going to be discussing weather apps with Paul tomorrow, so make sure you tune in for that. Something that most of us have on our phones, isn't it? That's it from us. Good night for now. Bye-bye.